Happy holidays. I am Jason Unruhe, the Mouse Rebel, political commentator and Third Worldist communist, bringing you resistance journalism in the bourgeois First World. I am here with Comrade Ned of the Bundist movement, and I am interviewing him in hopes of exposing a series of events that occurred between May 27th and June 2019. Now, I know there is a blog detailing these events and the events leading up to it, and I will leave a link in the description for the viewers to look at, but I would like to hear it from the horse's mouth, as you were an eyewitness to it, correct?
That's right, Jason, although it might be somewhat of a misnomer to say that I was a complete eyewitness. I really only was a partial eyewitness to what happened on May 27th. I showed up with Donna Newman near the end of I guess cleanup is the word. The disbanding of the two Marxist groups down here was all after the fact, and I learned about that through, secondhand information.
Still, your take on what happened there is much more reliable as a source than most, and one we can certainly trust is some of the victims of the incident were members of your organization. So let's get straight to the point then. What happened on May 27th, 2019?
Well, I have to start with what was supposed to happen that day. It was an interfaith wedding for a gay couple at the Cosmopolitan Jewish Reconstructionist community of Phoenix, Arizona. And it was supposed to be a great thing, because you had this black Jew, Isaiah Kamenstein, marrying an Arab Christian from Libya, Omar Hafez. I mean, this isn't your ordinary gay wedding because both of these men were still deeply religious. It was really a beautiful relationship, and neither of them were alienated from their communities for it. I think I sent you some pictures of the shul if you want to pull that up in the video now.
Yeah, you did. I'll put it up now, but I'm curious how all this ties in with your organization.
Well, Isaiah was a member of the Bund, so he invited the Bund to his wedding. 5 of the council members were there along with friends and family, as well as the normal members of the synagogue. But the incident, I hate that I keep calling it that. I'm going to call it what it was, what it is, what this is. This was a massacre. At some point, some vans showed up, and everybody was freaking murdered, killed. Donna and I showed up after the fact we showed up after the fact. And I tried to get closer. The cops were trying to tell us that we weren't seeing what was clearly right in front of us. They were tossing the bodies of the children into a black van when we showed up. Children. These cops fucking killed children.
Wait, this was in this city, right? How did nobody notice this? I mean, someone would have had to notice 3 vans pulling up to a building, guns blazing like an action movie, and at the very least, gunshots must have been reported.
Well, this gets into why we told them not to have the wedding in there in that freaking plaza. Hang on a second, I'll send you the pictures of that place for the video. This is a video clip. Okay, this is at the back of the synagogue where the incident just took place.
No access?
How do they have time to do that? The door handles. Hey, man. The plaza is normally pretty empty. The place next door is a bike shop ran by a very blatant neo-Nazi. He threatened the shul members on a number of occasions. As far as we know, he's probably glad to have them erased. You know how those scumbags are. Anyway, that is the Bundist movement, had received death threats before the wedding. And the last thing we wanted to be is in an isolated location all at once. But we wanted to be there for Isaiah. And you can tell in those pictures that even during the day, the plaza is a dead zone. I don't know how anybody can keep a business going there.
So, the cops there definitely saw you guys coming, and then when you showed up.
Yeah, they did. And they weren't very happy about it either. I mean, it's one thing to kill people inside of a mostly empty complex building, but there would have been no way, no way at all, Jason, for them to have killed us right in the parking lot. They told Donna nothing was happening and she doesn't belong there. I was furious and I started, screaming at them, and I tried to take down their badge numbers. I started asking for the badge numbers, and I got, it's, I wanted to hold somebody accountable for this. It's fucked, man. It's fucked.
So, in this situation, what was it that you and Donna ended up doing?
Well, we waited out over by a nearby hotel, Red Roof Inn, until most of the cops were gone. Now, my phone was damaged, but we managed to get a short clip of the back door. We noticed the calling card of a local neo-Nazi killer that goes by Jared 88 tagged on the wall. So we have some idea of who was responsible, but I don't think it was the cops acting out of their department's agenda. It's too specific. It's too precise. The cops are usually running human trafficking and drugs, not carrying out assassinations. We took a picture of a tag on the other one, but the cops got to us and threatened us. They threatened to detain us. I was frisked.
So I assume that you guys left after that.
Of course, we left. There had to be a there had to be a witness, and we're all that's left. But we're all that's left of the Bundist movement currently. Just me, Donna, and A.B. Weisfeld. We're not going to stop just because some of us got murdered. I mean, it's really tragic, but it has us more determined than ever, not intimidated, and we are determined. I'm shaken up. She's shaken up. I mean, I think that this was difficult for Dr. Weisfeld to psychologically deal with, but I think we're probably more determined now than ever, I mean, I've been on your show recently to share information, so, I keep my spirits up.
So did you ever go back?
A couple of times. And all evidence that there was ever a shoulder has been completely wiped clean. It's all been erased. No markings, no signs, or even any real traces of it remain. No trace. It's like they were erased. It's like it was all erased. Like everything. It's erased is the best word because this was a professional job. The property owners would have had to have been in on it too. I mean, for there to be no record of this anywhere, this can't have just been the cops acting alone. That's impossible. This was done in such a way that only people who knew it was their works, the people that work there in the plaza, they would have had to have been somewhat in on what was going on. The pictures I have and the videos I took are the only real evidence. Video actually that I took. That's the only evidence that a crime even took place. I mean, it's really bizarre. I knew the cops were organized out here, but this operation was, it's too fucking coordinated. Well, is this? I don't know what else to say about that.
So, how does this connect to the other Marxist group you mentioned getting disbanded?
As I said, that is the Bundist movement. We had been working with the Lenin Mao Communist Union on improving our dialectics and working together in general. It was a big thing for us because, the Jewish Bund and Marxist-Leninists have a very rocky history together. We haven't always worked well with each other in the past of Soviet Russia, to the point that the Jewish Bund was expelled from communist Russia. I mean, it wasn't communist Russia. I'm referring to an international meeting actually. When the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks had their split, their first voting act was to vote at the Jewish Bund. So we have a history that isn't very friendly with one another. So we were really burying the hatchet, between these two fragmented socialist groups. Marxist-Leninists working with Bundists is something brand new. Adopting each other's ideas is brand new.
So what you're saying here is that there's a historic progress, that this historic progress posed a real threat to the establishment. Am I correct?
Well, I don't know if I'd call Midnight Productions the establishment per se, but to have three community-based organizations operating and communicating with one another on issues that typically, affect the poor and disrupting their operations, at least we were, at least we operated regularly. We operated quite, well, we did pose a real threat to them. I mean, we were exposing a lot of grimy crap, man. I was informed about the Proletarian Revolutionary Front. I was informed that they were caught documenting the police destroying some material evidence. Now, it is my understanding that they came to document it on May 30th of this year, 2019, and 8 of their primary members were forced into a van and stabbed to death. That's my understanding of what I understand about that. I wasn't there for that. Now, one of the people that's indicted in this who came out was Bunny Linestung. Bunny Linestung, by the way, was the girlfriend of Jared 88. Okay, and her accomplice was with her. Now, they helped the Proletarian Revolutionary Front get, the last remaining survivor of it. They helped the Lenin Mao Communist Union helped them get out of Arizona.
It's starting to sound like Arizona is still kind of like the old Wild West.
In some ways, it really is. It really is, Jason. It's really easy to get a gun out here, and there's a lot of ranges and even more desert to go out shooting in. But even that small revenge was punished by the reports that the Lenin Mao Communist Union had been attacked by the cops. On June 8th, 3 of their members were murdered in their office. Jared 88 was there accompanied by what I believe was, from what I remember secondhand, that there were 2 cops there. From what I know, only one board member because there were 4 lead members. Only one of the 4 lead members has survived this, and he disbanded the Lenin Mao Communist Union after that. That pretty much covers the order of events as they are.
So, now that's quite a story. What you're talking about is a massive cover-up of assassinations and massacres, basically. Just based on sheer manpower necessary to pull off this kind of stuff, implies a massive conspiracy against the poor, essentially. For some people, this would be pretty tough to believe.
You know what? I actually think so, too. Donna Newman even said it's beyond proving in a court. We have no physical evidence except some photos and a couple of short, clips. Well, I have one clip, and it's something that happened before then, just to express the climate of what happens, because it was a documentary progress. But I do have a clip of being behind the synagogue, what was the synagogue, the shul, being, frisked by a police officer. I mean, I have that as evidence. We have a picture. We've been able to acquire a picture of the synagogue before this happened. It's one photo. That's pretty much it. I mean, they basically erased us, and well, they tried to, at least. I wouldn't even be talking about any of this if A.B. Weisfeld hadn't convinced me to. I can't even recall all of the details because I drank so heavily afterwards. How am I supposed to convince anybody that something like this even happened? Especially when people are so far removed from what is going on out here. They can't even begin to think it would take place. You can imagine that it's like to have your friends, what it's like to have your friends and your comrades killed, and nobody believes you. I don't have any proof. My pain and my mourning and my spiral into alcoholism isn't proof enough for these bourgeois pricks.
Not only have I left a link in the description for Pockrell, I have also left a link to an independent press organization that has reported this case. On May 27, 2019, 27 people were murdered. 16 were synagogue members, 11 were wedding guests. 5 of the 16 members were children. 3 of the children were girls, 2 of the children were boys. Earlier this year, Isaiah Kamat Stein and his boyfriend Omar Hafez, along with Omar's sister Rana Hafez, and 2 of his comrades, Yuri Adia and Marvin Eliyahu, took a trip to Venezuela. When they got back to America, they were intercepted by U.S. intelligence and were each forced into signing a statement promising not to talk about most of what they saw. In addition, they had to sign a statement promising not to mention which part of U.S. intelligence intercepted them upon their return to the USA. Comrade Net, do you believe this to have been one of their motives?
I'm not entirely convinced that this is one of the motives for the massacre, but if what Pockrell says about provocateurs trying to undermine the reporting of both Max Blumenthal and A.B. Martin, then yes, this could be one of the motives, very well so.
Another motive is believed to be that Yuri Adia and Marvin Eliyahu had strong evidence that much of the membership of the FSA were also American JDL. By the way, for those of you who don't know, the JDL stands for the Jewish Defense League, which is a very populist right-wing Zionist organization.
Well, I do believe this one. Uri Adia and Marvin Eliyahu had a lot of interesting information on the Free Syrian Army. They had exposed the FSA on Facebook repeatedly as being members of the JDL. But it is funny there's just how much of this notion is disregarded out of hand. Yet, there's many who, denounce this idea so quickly, but those who typically denounce it are often suspicious of some sort of freaking Jewish cabal somewhere out of, trying to undermine capitalism or American democracy, whatever. Basically the people who would denounce this this notion of the FSA being JDL would point to are the same type of people that point to Jewish Bolshevik conspiracy theories. But yet, when they actually find an existing covert Zionist control over an imperialist invasion force, then all of a sudden this just can't be anything but crazy talk. The evidence for JDL members also being what constitutes the bulk of the FSA's rank and file membership, and in some cases leadership, seems to have died with Uriadi and Marvin Eliyahu, sadly. By the way, this is what got them both kicked off of Facebook. Exposing the FSA in 2012 and 2013 was the case for several people to get removed from Facebook.
The JDL Zionist neo-Nazi connection. You do agree that the work your comrades in the Bundist movement did is a major reason for the wedding massacre? Yes.
There are neo-Nazis in both the Phoenix Police Department and the Glendale Police Department. There are also Kahana Zionists in both of those departments as well, Phoenix and Glendale. And the neo-Nazis work in cahoots with the Kahana Zionists, which are both in the Phoenix Police Department and Glendale Police Department. We were working very hard to expose this. This had a lot to do with our work, and I definitely think that this is a prime motive for the massacre.
Okay, now, you said this was expected, but expected by who?
The poor, the poor in Maricopa County expect, the police are this way. I mean, okay, if you go to the basic, quote unquote, working class, you want to know how. Well, we are world revolutionaries. But if you want to know where world revolutionaries intertwine with third world, this would be one of them. The labor aristocracy is pretty much what is the working class. They don't believe anything about cops doing things. It's the poor. It is always the poor. Throughout Maricopa County, Arizona, the poor are always expecting the cops to do something. Raid you, take stuff without a warrant on suspicion that you might be carrying drugs.
So the lumpen proletariat of Maricopa County, Arizona, then.
Precisely. As a result, many organizing, poor people, who want to better their conditions. They collectively will organize community power to protect themselves against the police. There was also a plan to uh, put in place a people's agenda to remove, heroin from the streets as well. Now the dealers are putting fentanyl in the black heroin, otherwise just known as black. That's the street word typically for black heroin is black. They put the fentanyl in the black, and a lot of people will die on the first try. 59th Avenue and Olive is a good example of that. That happened at a McDonald's. A young person died of an overdose, and these dealers are seen working with the cops in conjunction with them, like in cahoots. Whether it's informants or if they're working directly on the side of the dealers is not always understood. I mean, I suspect there's a little bit of both, but all the poor people see it. The poor see it. The lumpen proletariat are the ones that see it.
Okay, so this is probably a good moment to bring up Midnight Productions. What seems to tie this all together is a shadowy club that a guy by the name of Jared88 is a member of, a human trafficking and porn syndicate that also sells expensive snuff films. An organization that many seem to believe is filled with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office is exclusively tied to in some way or another. Now, even though many consider Midnight Productions to be fictional, it actually is real, and one of the most infamous leading members is Eric Scarletto, who in fact has a reputation for openly bragging about his membership in Midnight Productions. Comrade Nett, can you elaborate on this further?
Okay, Midnight Productions is common knowledge to the poor in Arizona. As you pointed out, yes, the lumpen proletariat, not the average working class. Eric Scarletto's criminal record, what's publicly known does not even begin to cover the horrible things that he is involved in, that people locally fully are aware of. Jared88 is part of Midnight Productions, but no one really knows Jared's name. However, Eric Scarletto, on the other hand, is very well known. It used to be near impossible to openly, discuss Midnight Productions. Some people actually did believe that if you even said the word, it was a death sentence. But aside from bizarre conspiracy theory programs such as the Truther Girls, you couldn't mention them. I've always personally known about Midnight Productions, and now almost everybody knows about them. Who's in these bad situations. Almost anyone who has a poor female friend, who webcams, has to watch out for Midnight Productions. Cam girls have to be extra careful to avoid Midnight Productions. The Bundes movement, all right. We in the Bundes movement, what we were doing was we were working really, aggressively to expose them, as were several Marxist and anarchist groups here in Arizona. We in the Bundes movement, we had declared war. Well, some say it was hand to top, but actually we all declared war on Midnight Productions, as did when they were in operation, the anarcho-syndical family, the Lenin Mao Communist Union, Panther Code, even independent street urchins that were trying to build soup kitchens. A lot of people had said that they had had enough of this. This is Arizona is one of the most high-profile places for human trafficking, and Midnight Productions is what connects all of the motives, and that, because they're connected to the cops, they're connected to the JDL, they're connected to the National Socialist movement.
Now, shortly after this massacre, the Proletarian Revolutionary Front came to Arizona to investigate what had happened at the Cosmopolitan Jewish Reconstructionalist community of Phoenix, Arizona. On May 30th, 2019, they were murdered for daring to investigate the strange events that took place. Bunny Lee Strong, Jared88's girlfriend, was their killer. She had strong ties to Midnight Productions. The only survivor of the Proletarian Revolutionary Front escaped Arizona with the aid of the Lenin Mao Communist Organization. Bunny Lee Strong, a neo-Nazi like her boyfriend, was aided by the JDL Zionist member by the name of Adina Ballon. Then on the 8th of June 2019, three leaders of the Lenin Mao Communist Organization were murdered by two Glendale police officers led by Jared 88. Pak Earl was part of the Lenin Mao Communist Organization. Now, Carmenet, can you tell us about this?
I had only heard about the events of May 30th and June 8th much after the fact. But I know that three of the members of the Lenin Mao Communist Union were murdered. They were murdered in the headquarters. And I have spoken to people that were privy to this, but, for reasons of their ethnic origin, they don't like to say anything, given the location of where the Lenin Mao Communist Union's headquarters is located. Basically, a lot of the people are migrants. I had only heard about the events of May 30th and June 8th much after the fact, but I know that three of the members of the Lenin Mao Communist Union were murdered, and they were murdered in their own headquarters. The police came to them with no warrant.
Now, going back to the May 30th, did you know any of the synagogue members other than Isaiah?
Aside from Isaiah P. Kamenstein, I knew Malachi Richard Burns, David Krams, and my friend Jenny. If it is all right, I would like to list the martyred on May 27th and June 8th.
Yeah, sure.
All right, the synagogue members: Isaiah P. Kamenstein, Amy Park, Jenny, sometimes pronounced Jeannie, a.k.a. Gray Weiserman, Malachi Richard Burns, Michael Luz, David Krams, Susanna Fredericks, Michelle Fredericks, daughter of Susanna Fredericks, Randall Gold, Sarah Bauer, Michael Bauer, son of Sarah Bauer, Gabriel Bauer, son of Sarah Bauer, Gordon Fluss, Rachel Davis, Sophia Davis, daughter of Rachel Davis, Anna Davis, daughter of Rachel Davis, and the non-members, they were the wedding guests: Miriam Emmisberg, Hannah Toff, Marvin Eliyahu, Uriah Dia, Linda Cold. By the way, she was an anarchist and she was Uriah Dia's girlfriend. Omar Havas, Rana Havas, Nashir Sadiq, Elizabeth Chershin, Samantha Wilson, and Larry Gard, who a lot of people actually believe was an informant. He's the guy that was the interfaith minister. So it's also highly unlikely, due to what investigations we've done on this, that wasn't really his name. All right, so the members of the Lenin Mao Communist Union: Chairman James Frankford, General Secretary Edward Phil, Arch Director Bradley Butch.
Okay, this part of the conversation is a dialogue between Comrade Nat and I will be asking him some basic questions. This will help us understand the importance concerning the Bundist movement, like the Black Panthers, the various types of anarchists, and just like Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, and Third Worldism, nothing remains static. All things are in a process of change. The Bundist movement has its ties back in the old Jewish labor Bund, but this is, to put it delicately, not your father's Bundism. This Bundism maintains all of its old features, such as national cultural autonomy, Deutschkeit, meaning here-ness in Yiddish, syndicalist cooperative socialism, self-defense. A strong commitment to constituent assemblies. For those of you who don't know, this refers to Soviet ML comrades. And for any anarchist fans who are less familiar with Bundism, this refers to confederal councils like CNT. The Bund is still championed direct democracy. Today, Bundism has evolved. Modern Bundism has adopted a range of ideas from both Marxism-Leninism, Marxism-Leninism, and to some extent even Maoism Third Worldism. Bundism takes the most principled ideas from anarchism and Gaddafi's green socialist theory. The Bundist movement upholds a different type of vanguardism that is not grounded in democratic centralism, yet willing to utilize a sort of democratic central education mechanism to some extent. Now, Comrade Nat, can you tell us today about the Bundist movement? I understand that you, Donna Newman, and Dr. Weisfeld and your fallen comrades developed a new theory for modern Bundism. Yuri Adia even wrote commentary on Joseph Stalin's The National Question. Can you tell us about this in more detail?
Well, yeah, certainly. Uri Adia came up with what he came up with is, instead of disagreeing with just out-flat disagreeing, as has been traditionally the case with most Bundists on Stalin's book on the national question, his way of approaching it was simply just to answer it. The Jewish people, so basically the Jewish people, we've always referred to ourselves as a people nation long before there was ever a national question. Lenin and Stalin were continuing the Marxian definition of the Hegelian nation-state. You know, the good thing about Joseph Stalin's work on the national question was that he expounded upon notions that had been left vague for the Russian Soviet position that, Marx himself hadn't actually approached, neither Hegel. Now, Marx accepted the Eurocentric and chauvinistic position of George William Frederick Hegel. Hegel fused the nation with the state. This is where nationalism actually emerged. Now, many forget that monarchism is what came before nationalism. Feudalism led to monarchism, which led to nationalism. It is monarchism that began to shake off feudalism in favor of capitalism. Nationalism from the start, in most cases at least, had capitalism as its economy. But it was monarchism that first began to replace feudalism with capitalism. Stalin's actual contribution in his book, Marxism and the National Question, is where he refers to Russia as a prison of nations. Now, Uri Adia accepted this. What Uri Adia rejected was how Stalin chose to define nationality, sort of. Some of this, basically some of it he agreed with, some of it he wrote commentary, and it's pretty good commentary because there are positions Stalin took that we agree with in that book, and there are parts we flat out disagree with, and we mention those disagreements. This was taken up by Uri Adia. That was particularly his position. He wrote some commentary on it.
Well, yeah, I feel that there are too many variables to really define nationality the way Stalin decided to. I've been a critic of the national question in the past. Not that I'm against the national question, but that it's a little bit more complicated than Stalin lays out. Now, I advocated for a federated states in places like Syria and Rojava, which brings me to something else. The Bundist movement, as I understand it, is for the cause of the YPJ, but you and your comrades condemn the way that they have helped Zionism and Americanism, and you object to reactionary Kurdish forces that have too much power in Rojava that have now decided to ally with the Saudis.
Correct. And we are the most qualified to criticize Rojava. The Jewish Bund made the same type of mistakes that the Kurdish forces in Syria have been making. Allying with the wrong crowds because of feeling marginalized by host national chauvinism, basically.
Okay, we should take this opportunity to dispel something that is a bit misunderstood. Comrade Nat, you, Dr. Weisfeld, Donna Newman frequently disagree with each other, but the three of you remain united on core issues that constitute the Bundist line. Can you explain this?
Well, all three of us oppose Western intervention, whether this intervention is coming from imperialist fascist America or neocolonialist fascist Israel or colonialist imperialist Saudi Arabia, and we oppose the aggression of Turkey. Our position of Assad is a bit in disagreement, and I grow tired of those from outside the Bundist movement pressuring me particularly to explain why I support Assad for tactical reasons yet condemn him for Baathism. So instead of explaining the details of Syria, which remains the largest argument within the Bundist movement, let me instead say the three of us oppose intervention and outsiders coming in to do harm to Assad and to his government. I find Assad to be a problem, but I will not support his overthrow, nor will I condone disgrace upon Rojava. Yet we remain critical of many of the reactionary moves taken by Rojava.
Well, I'd like to go further into how you guys view certain Marxists. I understand the Bundist movement upholds Vladimir Lenin, Otto Bauer, Joseph Stalin, Leon Trotsky, Emma Goldman, Rudolf Rocker, Mao Zedong, Lin Biao, Huey P. Newton, Eldridge Cleaver, and Muammar Gaddafi.
Well, I understand that many consider this to be in contradiction, but what some keep forgetting is that we are Bundists, not communists. We definitely particularly want to work with communists, though, but we are not communists. We're Bundists. We agree with Otto Bauer on his description of nations being made of, the national character, but we can comprehend why Joseph Stalin considered Bauer's position to be hollow. That is why Uriadia flushed out the definition of what the national character is. As for all of the others mentioned, we take what we find applicable to us and we advance the theory.
So now I would like to go over a few things with you, Comrade Net. We have had some very interesting conversations. Quite a few people have begged, pleaded, and even demanded that myself, Finbol, and Damien get together and start conversations on vanguardism. I admit that this is something that we should do together. It's just hard to pull that off. But one of the people who has explained the greater necessity for this is Comrade Net. Now, Comrade Net, why is it so important from your point of view?
First, because Finbol is a Marxist-Leninist, and Damien is a Marxist-Leninist Maoist, and you are a Maoist Third Worldist. This is all important within a particular Leninist structure. Those who subscribe to all three of you need to see a genuine representation of Leninist theory.
So you're actually a big fan of the Finnish Bolshevik.
That's incorrect. I'm the biggest fan of the Finnish Bolshevik. The biggest. I can recall a video from the Finnish Bolshevik where he had said concerning anarchists and Trotskyists, and this is paraphrasing him, so this quote is a paraphrase. I just wish they'd stop shitting on us. So the Bundist movement makes the pledge that, as far as the Marxist-Leninists are concerned, we aren't going to shit on you. There are obviously going to be disagreements, but we won't shit on you.
So, what is permanent revolution from the viewpoint of the Bundist movement?
I'm not as good at this as Donna Newman, so you'll have to bear with me. Donna Newman came up with an idea based on Dr. Weiswald's idea of where permanent revolution is arising in the Middle East and Africa. You see it with the Arab Spring. You see it today with communist parties in Africa. And this is not a strike on Trotskyists. But I don't typically ask Trotskyists because they've never given me a definitive answer of what they think permanent revolution is. I know that there's an infamous joke about that. We have a very concrete understanding of it. Permanent revolution is the revolution that is not halted, and it will skip over things like feudalism. So, for instance, it did that with Mao's China. Now, I know Mao was no friend of Trotsky, but I think that Trotsky did kind of have an analysis about such things. Now, there's a lot to criticize about Trotsky, but I do think that the permanent revolution theory is true. I do think it needs more work, and I do think it needs further analysis, and I think it can be synthesized with Marxism-Leninism a bit more. I accept that this will not be accepted by a lot of people, but this is kind of where we take it. So it leaps over, it's non-linear, and right now we require a global revolution, and we believe that there are things in permanent revolution that provide the answers to that. So it's the unceasing revolution that even when halted, it springs up. But it's the synthesis of Donna Newman on this is that it is sort of spontaneous, but it's also planned out thoroughly. So it happens. There's a disruption. You move into the disruption by getting to know the people who are angry and what their grievances are, and you can go back to Lenin with that, getting into what people's grievances are. And this gets back further with Mao. He did the same thing. So it's a synthesis. So we have a very synthesized notion of it.
Now, Comrade Net, you work a lot with different anarchists, Maoists, a lot of different people. What is it that Maoists and anarchists? You keep saying that they want to see certain stuff from me. What is it that they want to see?
I have explained to them that you're very busy, as best I can, and I've also explained that I cannot speak for Jason on here. They want to see you cover the rule because they know that you basically, okay, you're a third worldist, resistance in the first world, right? The best of the Maoists and the anarchists are doing actual resistance. The problem is that they have a ridiculous uphill battle. They are in the lumpen proletariat. And I know a lot of people don't like hearing about the lumpen proletariat, but that's the only real proletariat in the first world. The working class in the United States of America is not proletariat. In fact, it's extremely bourgeois. And even those in the American working class, for instance, they wouldn't be... I don't know so much about the Canadian working class, but in the American working class, I would say that they are not, even if they're not aristocracy labor, their loyalty is to be, it's either with or married into, or they try to become more like the aristocracy labor and hoping that they can become middle class and have a 401k. But the lumpen proletariat, those that do wake up, they don't, like here in the United States, they tend not to identify with the United States, and they tend to identify with people in the third world, and they would want to help further whatever is going on in the third world. They recognize that that's where the base is. And in fact, I would say that there's even some of them that are curious about the LLCO. I have talked to some people that are lumpen that are curious about the LLCO. I just don't know how to get anybody in touch with the LLCO.
Now, tell me about the national cultural autonomy and how it is that the Bundist movement defines nationality.
I'll answer that, but I'll do it sort of in the reverse, if that's okay. A nation is basically, long story short, it's gathering of peoplehood. It's a culture, but it's more than culture. So culture and ethnicity are culture and religion. And we do recognize religion to be more in the context of religiosity as a matter of orientation. That there are just certain things that are a matter of orientation. We know Byzantine Catholics that consider Byzantine Catholic to be a nation, and they have a whole history, and they have a whole culture, and they have a whole literature. And they also find the Roman Catholics to be kind of boring. The Jewish nation is based on culture and religion as well. And we've always referred to ourselves as a nation, as a people nation. And we are a diaspora nation. And no matter what, people, like even when Jewish people, don't believe in God anymore, they're still holding on to a lot of religious concepts, even without God, and they have all these cultural dynamics. And people ask why. It's because we exist, and we require autonomy. And here's the thing. The state of Israel is in our way. It's in the way of national cultural autonomy. We should have collective national rights wherever we live with respect to the laws of the countries that we're in. We are great contributors to society. Iran is one of the best examples. Those of us in Iran, no matter what you hear from the state of Israel, we love being in Iran. We thrive in Iran. Iran is a perfect example of what happens when we have autonomy as our own people and have representation in a parliament. And we're working amongst Shia and Sunni Muslims and Christians and Zoroastrians. I mean, we thrive really well. And that's what I also say, hands off Iran.
Now, you've said that you are Bundist, but you're not third worldist. What tends to attract you about third worldism?
It appears to me and to Donna Newman. I would even say Dr. Weisfeld, but definitely me and Donna Newman. It appears to us that global encirclement is logical. In fact, Donna Newman agrees with global peoples. It makes sense. There are things in the LLCO that make sense. No, I don't. I'm not gonna like, kiss ass and just say, oh yes, we agree with everything in third worldism. No. But we agree with a great deal with it. And in fact, a lot more than a lot of other groups do. I mean, you cannot deny the global class divide. You'd have to be a moron. When you started in 2009, Donna Newman actually was watching you before I did. And she said that she was very impressed that this young gentleman was talking about Marxism. And, with such sincerity. She was a big fan of and I became a big fan of this video too. Right-wing patriots don't get it. It was very appealing. Now, you weren't a third worldist then; you were a Maoist, I think. But when you became when you were asked in your Q&A, "Are you a Maoist third worldist?" and you say, "I am," I thought that was obvious. She was like, "Finally, because that's just where he was headed anyway, and that's just more where he's comfortable." She's like, "Finally, like, what are you talking about?" She's like, "He finally declared that he's a third worldist. He just said I am a Maoist third worldist." I learned what I knew of third worldism at that time. I only got from her. I actually started studying more of third worldism after the 2 interviews I did of you on our channel. As I've gotten into it, I see how certain Maoists are pretty hip to third worldism. They don't consider themselves third worldists, but they agree with the global class divide, and they agree that the base is, as I told you, like even anarchists, certain anarchists, like lump in anarchists in squatters. They know that the base is in the third world. They know that there is no way to fix the United States of America, for instance. And I am mostly speaking United States of America, but that's we see as Bundists, we are world revolutionaries, and because we're world revolutionaries, there's a lot in third worldism that makes sense to us. Third world has taken the bigger picture, and that's what we do.
In terms of people that you would watch, or you would recommend that people watch, who would you recommend?
I do recommend Maoist Rebel News. I think that Jason, under your show is real press, and I want to build real press. That kind of gets into why I think that you and Damien and Finbull should do this, is because I think we can't rely on the Gray Zone, the Real News Network, Democracy Now, RT, Press TV. I mean, they're good for these are all good for what they're worth. I mean, some not as much as others. I mean, some people have gripes about Democracy Now. I do too, although I think there's good stuff, but there's some reactionary stuff in there too. Like, what we're doing is we're forced to deal with a social democratic media and not a socialist one. So that's what I think is. I think people should subscribe to Damien. They definitely should subscribe to the Fiendish Bolshevik. Another person that people should watch is the Black Internationalist. Now, he pulls a lot from the United Panther movement, and he pulls a lot from the Maoist internationalist movement. Like, he has a grasp of the early proto-third worldism. Thanks to learning more after I'd done those interviews about Maoism, third worldism, because you've mentioned in your book that you want people to look into the Maoist internationalist movement and the leading light communist organization. Well, I did do that. And so when he would bring up references, I recognized that he was quoting a lot the Maoist internationalist movement. And I do think people really should, especially if they're interested in the Panthers, and if you don't want a ridiculous Sakaiist understanding of the book Settlers, and you want more of an analysis where it's actually synthesized with other books, go to the Black Internationalist. I would also say, for anarchism, most anarchist channels are not worth it, because the actual anarchists are usually squatters. They're usually in the rural, and they're usually building soup kitchens, and they're usually building connections to a lot of people that nobody wants to deal with, because people say they love the poor, but they hate the smell of the poor. I have my disagreements with Chris Hedges, but I might as well quote him when he's correct. I don't recommend Chris Hedges unless you're very well educated, and he is not a Marxist. He's something else. But as far as anarchists are concerned, if you wanted a general understanding, sure, you could watch Libertarian Socialist Rants, but Libertarian Socialist Rants is terrible at anarchist theory. I actually suggest people watch, and there are things you can disagree with them on. I definitely disagree with them on some things. But I think that Non-Compete is the one who actually represents the spirit of anarchism, at least the spirit.
Non-Compete tries to represent anarchism. Well, Non-Compete tries to represent it as best, he can. It would really be better if real anarchists made their own channels, honestly. However, because of some of the reactionary views that come out of Non-Compete, I also think anyone subscribing to Non-Compete needs to subscribe to a channel Puck Earl introduced me to, and that's Neo-Jacobin. And I strongly suggest to start with the video, The Worst Communist on YouTube, a Materialist Examination.
Oh, well, I would also think that people should go to the Bundist Movement, channel, check out Dr. Weisfeld's channel. He actually goes down every year to the West Bank, and there's a lot of things that just haven't been done before that he is doing. But those are my recommendations.
We are at the conclusion of this interview with Comrade Net of the Bundist movement, and I think it would be best if I asked him about an incident that took place a little while ago. Five council members of yours were murdered. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the when the basically we had just me and Donna had just put out part 3 of Bundist political awareness on the channel. We were due to messaging between myself and Dr. Weisfeld on my cell phone and her through her computer. We basically we were both messaging Dr. Weisfeld back and forth. So we were late to the wedding, and when we came there, we saw a lot of police officers. And as they were there, all the nefarious stuff that I had mentioned before took place. And that's what happened basically. Everything that had been mentioned previously.
Comrade Net, have you had a hard time getting a hold of the pictures of your comrades?
Yes, that's been part of the issue is that they're backed up on different USBs, and so I've had to find all the USBs so I can put together for you the pictures of the comrades. The 5 council members, we only have each one. We only have one picture from. Donna Newman has pictures of herself. I have pictures of myself, but we didn't really take a lot of group photos together or anything like that. She took an individual picture of each one of them for the manifesto, because at the beginning of the manifesto we're hoping that each one of us will have a picture mentioning said author, because it will be myself, Dr. Weisfeld, Donna Newman, and the 5 council members, and that's the purpose of these pictures. But they also now serve the purpose of showing you what they look like.
Okay, so tell me about the person that we see in this photo. This is Hannah Toff, right?
Yes, this is Hannah Toff. She was the councilwoman of strategic projects. She headed up self-defense. She's also the first to incorporate Marxism-Leninism, the ideas of Marxism-Leninism, and essentially at the end of their life they had transformed that even further to Marxism-Leninism, Maoism. But she was the one to first be bold enough to do that, which is controversial because the Bund does not have a very good relationship with Marxist-Leninists, and we still maintain everything the old Bund had before. However, that's one of the things that happened is MLs and MLMs have reconsidered, not all of them universally obviously, but a lot of them have reconsidered the concepts of such concepts as national cultural autonomy, and we've also reconsidered a lot of the theoretical claims that Marxist-Leninists have made in light of the success that it has had. Not to mention when we look at the Black Panthers, as has been stated before, they were technically practicing national cultural autonomy, but you can't deny the fact that they were more or less Marxist-Leninist, and that the Mao Zedong version of that was their template. So, Hannah Toff is extremely crucial because she was the one that was first bold enough to do that, to basically bring an ML concept into it.
Now, this one, Isaiah P. Kometstein, is that how you say it?
Yeah, Isaiah P. Kometstein. He was the councilman of committees, and one of the committees was a committee for the Roman Catholic Church, because that's another group that Jewish people don't have with Marxist-Leninists. It's just the Bund basically, but Jewish people as a whole, we haven't had the best history with the Roman Catholic Church. However, there have been, since the 20th century, there's been a lot of new dialogue that has happened with Catholics. So that was a committee which we found necessary, as building different relations with the Roman Catholics. That's not the only committee he dealt with. We also had an LGBT community. An LGBT committee which he headed up, which was also very important because he challenged a lot of them, as he himself was homosexual. He challenged a lot of the people in the LGBT basic community out here in the West on a lot of times where their funding was coming from, and he helped with re-strategizing on things like that.
And this Mary Ann Emsberg, Or can you tell me about her?
Miriam Emmisberg was the councilwoman of education, and part of the education that this required was a lot of basically historical references. Now, we find that Marxism is probably the best when it comes to class analysis, class struggle. Like, even if you're not a Marxist, any real serious socialist has to borrow from Marxism because of its class analysis. But one of the things Miriam Emmisberg was constantly challenging Karl Marx's, work on was what she considered his historical revisionism, because he was from a Victorian era, and his writings were very linear, and she found a lot of information that she would put up front, and she would challenge, a lot of the discourse that Marxists use, and but at the same time, she'd back up Marxists when they were found correct. So there's a lot of things that people gloss over because simply Marxists say it, but she could verify a lot of what Marxists said. So the education for the Bundists, so that people see how coherent we can be with history, was largely dependent on her contributions. She made a lot of references. Also, because she was a student of Frederick Danson, like myself, she was able to clarify to a lot of people what religiosity really is, because although you see her with the headscarf, and she, in a lot of ways, was the most traditional into Orthodox Judaism, she did that largely because of identifying what her religiosity really was. But actually, she was an atheist. So, like, one of the things that she kept reminding people about is that an atheist wouldn't have atheism if there's a serious atheist, because atheist would refer to no God, basically, to make it short enough. And so why would somebody who believes no God have no Godism? It wouldn't make sense. So, and that's another thing, she didn't just get into the context of, with all of us, about what religiosity really, what it equates to, but how somebody who has religiosity may not necessarily believe in the theology aspect of religion. They might just have the orientation of religiosity. So that was part of her education. She was also trying to get us to. She had a lot to do with the unified lines we have, because like there are obvious areas where all of us would depart, and to this day, Donna Newman, Dr. Weiss, and myself, we will depart on some subjects, but we're largely unified on certain things because of her contributions. Miriam Emmisberg, when something was undeniable, we would have to adopt it, and that has a lot to do with her research. She was probably the most historically literate person I'd ever met, and if Frederick Danson died years ago, but Fred, I was one of his favorite students, as was another student that I won't be mentioning because it would be against his wishes if I did. But over time, I would say that she probably turned out to be the best student of his, because her understanding of history is on par with his.
And Marvin Eliyahu, can you tell me who he was?
Marvin Eliyahu was the councilman of World Forums. At one of these World Forums, and you might be interested to know about this, was to be a World Forum, a Third World Forum. There was a plan to reach out to the Third World. I wish we had known more about the LOCO like we do now. Like, I did a lot of research with Donna Newman on this. Although it's not like Marvin didn't know who they were, but like there's so many bridges that can be built now that we didn't exactly have then. Aside from Hannah Tuff, Marvin Eliyahu is one of the ones that actually adopted a lot of Marxist-Leninist ideas, and he saw the world was often divided to different things, and one of the most important was that there needs to be a relationship with the Third World, because the Third World does have, well, as a Third World, as you already know, they have the highest level for potential for revolution, and that any struggles in the First World, that we need to connect them with the Third World, and not through lip service, not through just saying so, but through actually being connected to their struggles. So, like, if we have to give them aid for their revolutions, we should do so, and he consistently encouraged that. Marvin Eliyahu also was born in Israel, so he had a lot of understanding to how Zionism works inside Israel, and how they do what they do and why they do what they do. Like me, he was a Sephardi. He was a Sephardi, and he gave us a lot of cultural insight to what the state of Israel, has in cultural context. So, like, according to Marvin Eliyahu, it's largely run by the state of Israel is largely run by an Ashkenazi oligarchy. However, the cultural aspects that they use to keep, Israel, alive in any sense with the public, is largely taken through Sephardi culture, not Ashkenazi culture. In fact, you can also make the claim that the Ashkenazi leadership is a bunch of self-hating Ashkenazi. And part of their neo-colonialism is not just stripping away who the Ashkenazi were by also making them hate Yiddish, and not just by taking Sephardi accents to their Hebrew, which is something that they do, but an ongoing cultural genocide against the Sephardim that I have been hit by, that he had been hit by, that many Sephardim feel.
And now, can you tell me about Yuri Adia?
Uri Adia was the councilman of national affairs. One of the most important contributions was that he gave us a real awareness of what was going on in Syria. In fact, a lot of what I know about Syria today I based on the knowledge he provided. So he was Jewish, and he was half Mizrahi, and he had strong connections to Syria. Like, he had family in Syria, Jewish family in Syria, mind you. And he also was very good at explaining what the real Kurdish plight was and what the complication between the Kurds and the Syrians really was and is to this day. So, like, for instance, a lot of people will say, well, we have to support the YPJ regardless of what they do. His line that we pretty much adopted is like, no, we support the YPJ in principle for the right to autonomy, but we condemn pretty much every action that they do when they align with imperialism. This makes it even better as Buddhists because we know where our mistakes were, and maybe our relationship would have been better with the Bolsheviks had we recognized our mistakes. And there's criticisms we could make of the Bolsheviks, but I would reserve that more for my channel. But one of the things is that we don't condemn the YPJ outright because we do know why they do what they do. We don't agree with pretty much of what they do, but we do understand their plight. But one of the things he expressed was where Syria is at, and how Jewish Syrians and why Jewish Syrians tend to side with Assad over anybody. And that largely has to do with even people that don't like Assad will support Assad because they don't like the alternatives to Assad. And to make this worse, any alternatives to Assad would have been stronger had the West never intervened in the first place. And that's something he consistently explains to people. And I met several Syrians through Uri Adia. He was best for his position as the councilman of national affairs. And one of the top things we learned about from him was Syria and how complicated Syria is. I mean, it's not like Israel versus Palestine. That's obvious. Israel's the colonial power. Palestine's the indigenous. With Syria, there's a lot of nationalities within Syria that each one of them have the right to autodetermination, including the Kurdish. But the Kurdish, they should get their act together. The YPJ could be so much better if they stuck with, for instance, working with Assad, given the way that the inevitable backstabbing that Turkey would do to them. Turkey backstabbed them. That was something that Uri saw coming. And it would be really good if they don't work with the Saudis, because the Saudis will backstab them just the same way the America-Israel alliance has backstabbed them. Now, what does Trump care about now? Well, the oil. Because there's no moral argument left for him, so it's just open, naked imperialism at this point. Uri would feel very vindicated today if he was alive, seeing how things are turning out. And we are a friend to the YPJ, we are a friend to the Kurdish people, but we reserve the right to make the harshest criticisms and I will say that to anybody who cares about the YPJ, you need to do the same thing, criticize them, make massive criticisms, because everything they're doing right now is reactionary. And it doesn't serve their cause. It will only hurt the Kurdish people. It will only cause more ethnic hatred from outside of your Rojava, which is likely to escalate if they continue to take with the strategy they have. And I can't wait for the manifesto to come out, because Uri's particular say on Syria covers a lot of things I think people miss. a lot of things. He was the third one that actually adopted a lot of Marxism-Leninism. And yeah, borrowing from Marxism-Leninism, I find, was never a mistake, because it was what we were missing. Like, there's still things that we hold to that the original Marxist-Leninists would not agree with, but there are a lot of concepts that come from Marxism-Leninism that I think that, serves best that we've adopted. And he was part of that contribution. And explaining national cultural autonomy to Marxist-Leninists and Marxist-Leninist Maoists, he was probably the most efficient at explaining that to people. Explaining, to basically Leninists and Maoists how that works and how important that is. And they listened to him.
I know, but before I end this interview, is there anything else that you want to add?
I think that when dealing with the uphill struggle, because if you're in the United States of America, you're in the ultimate uphill battle if you're a revolutionary. And I think that left unity, I don't want to be too nasty about this, but I think left unity is stupid. That's never what we advocated, and that's not what I advocate today. I advocate tactical unity and anti-sectarian solidarity. If anarchists are fighting neo-Nazis in the streets, they're not going to be like, oh, wow, the Marxists are here to take over. They're going to be like, oh, hell yeah, reinforcements. And I would let people know who watch YouTube, who go on Facebook, very few of these anarchists speak for the anarchists. A lot of these people are just middle-class liberals. And I encourage this solidarity. I think that when we look at the situation today, things have never been worse, and we need more solidarity. And we had solidarity with a lot of people. We had solidarity with quite a few anarchists. We were developing a new dialogue that had never existed before between Marxist-Leninists and then, of course, Marxist-Leninist Maoists. And then we got you, a Maoist third worldist. And this kind of dialogue is necessary. And it's time that, we can keep our stances, and our disagreements may have their own validity, but instead of jumping for left unity, which is never going to work, we need to jump for tactical unity, and we need to jump for anti-sectarian solidarity, because there's an old Marxist code, and I'm sort of paraphrasing it, that started with Fred Hampton here in the United States, and to the conscious lumpen proletariat in the first world, particularly in the United States, we're going back to that slogan, and that's, yeah, constitutionalists may say it, but it's really the Maoist street code that started this. An infringement against one of us will be an infringement against all of us. If there is a legislation against Marxists, anarchists will do well to combat that. Same with if there's a legislation ever against anarchists, because either of a false flag or whatever could happen in the future, you never know. Marxists will do well to defend them. I think that's something we kept putting out there, and we were being heard, and that has something to do with what happened to us. So, and I thank everybody for listening, and I also do suggest people watch more MRN, because there seems to be more people tuning into MRN, Maoists and anarchists, and I think you being a third worldist actually helps, because that way, they know that, like, for instance, for the anarchists, they're more comfortable with hearing, I think, a third worldist criticize them, because they know that you're not going to try to control the show, because that's one of their problems they have with the Maoists. I mean, and they have a good relationship out here in Arizona with Maoists, but they're always concerned when are the Maoists going to try to control them. A third worldist like yourself, when you give your critique, they know that you're not trying to take over anything. They're just giving your critique, and that makes them very open to you, and that's why you have actually an anarchist following today. It's because they know obviously Jason Unruh is not going to try to act like the one-man vanguard.
Oh, no, that's never been something I've tried to do. Now, just to finish this off, this is a video that I have wanted to do for some time, and this is a video that Net and I have discussed about doing for some time, because it's a very significant issue, but there's a lot of ducks you have to get in line before you make a video like this. Obviously, when you reveal something as important as this, as significant as this, as violent as this is the kind of thing that you really need. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, And the reason I say that is because there's been a very concerted effort to cover up what's happened here. And it's very important that we get this out and people know what happened, because the mainstream media is either uninterested in covering it, or they're deliberately, trying to cover this whole situation up. And I hope that my efforts here in broadcasting this will hopefully make some of the people who were a part of this be held accountable. And I hope this helps. And I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.